My name is Thaddeus Kincaid. I worked as a water treatment specialist at Oak Ridge Correctional Facility when the dead started walking. While others fought with guns, I survived with filters and chemistry knowledge. This is how I made it through the first month of the zombie apocalypse, when clean water became more valuable than gold and every decision meant life or death. Before we start the video, let us know what country you are tuning in from in the comment section below. Perhaps we will make a story there. Let's begin. The second I knew something was seriously wrong was when Warden Phillips ordered a full lockdown 2 hours before nightfall. In my 12 years working at Oak Ridge, that had never happened. But I'm getting ahead of myself. My name is Thaddeus Kincaid. Most people call me Thad. Until a month ago, I was the water treatment specialist at Oak Ridge Correctional Facility in Virginia. I'm recording this because information is as valuable as clean water these days, and maybe my story can help someone else survive. I never thought my job would save my life. When people asked what I did, I'd say prison maintenance because explaining water treatment systems made their eyes glaze over. Funny how things change. Now, when I tell survivors I know how to purify water, they look at me like I'm holding the last gun on earth. It started on a Tuesday in June. I remember because we were doing monthly maintenance on the East Wing filtration system. Normal day. Chelsea, my assistant, a smart kid, fresh out of college with an environmental engineering degree, was logging chemical levels while I replaced filters. Our other team member, Lucas, was fixing a pressure valve issue in C block. Just routine work. The first report came over the radio around noon. Some kind of disturbance in the infirmary. Not unusual in a maximum security facility housing 1,200 inmates, but something in the guard's voice caught my attention. He sounded scared, not annoyed. In a prison, that distinction matters. By 2 o'clock, rumors were spreading. An inmate had attacked a doctor. Nothing new there except for how they described it. Went absolutely feral and had to be restrained by 6 guards. Then we heard a medical team was coming in from the CDC. That's when I started paying real attention. Chelsea noticed it too. "Something's off," she said, looking at her tablet. "Water consumption in the infirmary quadrupled in the last hour." We both knew what that meant, either a major leak or unusual activity. In prison systems, water tells stories most people miss. I called Lucas to check on him. He said guards were escorting all maintenance personnel out of the cell blocks. "They're not saying why," he told me, but I overheard someone mention rust fever. Whatever that is. We'd heard about rust fever on the news. Strange outbreaks in coastal cities. Symptoms started with copper-colored rashes and ended with extreme aggression. Officials were saying it was contained. Officials were wrong. By 4 o'clock, Warden Phillips ordered the lockdown. All inmates confined to cells. All non-essential staff to evacuate. Essential personnel, which included the water treatment team, to report to emergency stations. Our station was the treatment facility, a separate building connected to the main prison by underground pipes and a secured walkway. Chelsea, Lucas, and I gathered our emergency kits, standard procedure, though we'd never actually used them, and headed to the facility. On our way across the yard, I noticed 4 military vehicles parked outside the administrative building. Men in hazmat suits were entering the infirmary. "This is bad," Lucas said. He was right. The water treatment facility was essentially a concrete bunker. 3 rooms of pipes, tanks, filtration systems, and chemicals. 1 small office with monitors showing water usage throughout the prison. 2 bathrooms with showers. A supply closet with enough chemicals to keep water safe for months. 1 reinforced door to the walkway. Small windows high on the walls. And most importantly, access to the underground drainage system that fed into the river. We weren't thinking about survival then. We were professionals doing our jobs, making sure the prison had clean water during whatever this emergency was. The facility's isolation from the main building was just a safety feature to protect the water supply from contamination or sabotage. We didn't realize it would become our salvation. That night, Chelsea monitored the systems while Lucas and I watched the news. Reports were coming in from all over the East Coast. Rust fever was spreading faster than anyone anticipated. Symptoms progressed more quickly, too. The rash appeared, followed by fever, then violent behavior within hours instead of days. Hospitals were overwhelmed. The National Guard was being deployed. "My wife and kids," Lucas said, staring at his phone. "They're in Norfolk. I need to get to them." His face showed the beginning of a fear I would come to know too well. "They're safer at home," I told him. "Roads will be chaos if this gets worse." If. I still thought in terms of if, not when. Around midnight, we got our first real warning of what was coming. A guard called from the control room. "We've got 4 infected in quarantine, 2 guards, 2 inmates. Doctor says it's definitely rust fever." "How bad?" I asked. "They're strapped down and still breaking the restraints." "Never seen anything like it." One bit through his own lip, trying to bite the doctor. His voice dropped. "And the rash. It's spreading visible to the eye, like rust forming on their skin." I asked about containment protocols. The guard laughed. Not humor. Desperation. "Protocol?" "They never trained us for this. Half the night shift didn't show up. We're making it up as we go." That's when I first thought about our facility's vulnerabilities. The door was solid, but would it hold against determined force? The windows were high, but not unbreakable, and the walkway had emergency override access from the main building. I made a decision then. "Let's secure ourselves," I told Chelsea and Lucas. "Move supplies away from the windows. Barricade the door. Set up sleeping arrangements." "You think we'll be staying here?" Chelsea asked. "Just precautionary," I said. But I was already counting our supplies, calculating how long we could last if things fell apart. The prison's emergency protocols were designed for riots or power outages, temporary situations, not collapse. We worked through the night, organizing and securing the facility. By dawn, we had a makeshift living space in the main treatment room, away from windows and the door. We had food and water for at least 2 weeks, longer if we rationed. We had tools, chemicals, first aid supplies. What we didn't have was weapons. In a prison, maintenance staff don't carry anything that could become one. As sunlight filtered through the high windows, illuminating dust particles floating through the air, Chelsea checked the monitors. "Water usage is all wrong," she said. "Nothing in D block, spikes in the infirmary, fluctuations everywhere else." "Administration going crazy with cleanup," Lucas suggested. "No," I pointed to the timestamps. "These patterns don't match any protocol." That's when the power flickered for the first time. A brief moment of darkness, enough to make us all freeze. The backup generators kicked in seconds later, but we'd received the message. Things were starting to break down, and we were about to discover just how fragile civilization really was. By noon, we'd lost communication with half the prison. Our radio picked up scattered transmissions from guards in the secure areas, but entire blocks went silent. The security camera feeds told the story our radios couldn't. C block was in chaos. Inmates breaking out of cells, guards abandoning posts. The infirmary had been overrun entirely. The infected moved differently than I expected. Not shambling or slow like in movies. They ran, they climbed, they used basic tools. But their coordination was off, jerky, like their brains couldn't quite control their muscles properly. And they were relentless. I watched one infected guard repeatedly slam himself against a security door until his shoulder dislocated, then continue using his broken arm as a battering ram. "We need to call for help," Chelsea said, her voice tight with controlled panic. "Who would come?" Lucas was pacing, checking his phone every few minutes, though service had died hours ago. "Military's overwhelmed. Police, too. Look at the news." He was right. The few broadcasts still running showed the same scenes in every city: barricades failing, emergency services collapsing, people fleeing. One reporter stood on a rooftop in Richmond, describing masses of infected filling the streets below, while helicopters evacuated officials from government buildings. Mid-sentence, her broadcast cut to static. "We barricaded the door using shelving units, chemical drums, anything heavy we could move. I set up a makeshift alarm system using metal tools that would clatter if the door was breached. Chelsea inventoried our supplies. Food for maybe 2 weeks, water purification chemicals for months, first aid kit, tools, battery-powered radio, flashlights, and the tablets we used for monitoring the water systems. The good news," I told them, trying to find some optimism, "is that we control the water. As long as the main pipes hold and the generators keep running, we can maintain clean water to any section of the prison still functioning." "And that helps us how?" Lucas snapped. "It gives us value," I said simply. "If any part of this place stays organized, they'll need us." By evening, the situation had deteriorated further. The security feeds showed infected roaming freely through most areas. The administrative building still seemed secure, as did parts of A Block. The yard had become a killing field. I couldn't watch after a while, but I forced myself to monitor the cameras near our facility. We needed to know what was coming. The main generators failed around midnight. Emergency lighting kicked in as the backup system engaged, bathing everything in dim red light. We had maybe 3 days of fuel for the backups. After that, we'd lose power to the treatment systems, though gravity-fed water would still flow through some pipes. "We should leave while we can," Lucas said, staring at the camera feeds. "Follow the drainage tunnels to the river. Make our way to Norfolk." "That's suicide," Chelsea argued. "We're safer here than anywhere. The infected can't get through that door easily. We have supplies. Someone will restore order eventually." I wasn't sure who was right. The drainage tunnels were my fallback plan. I'd mentally mapped the route many times during routine inspections, but they were narrow, dark, and stretched for nearly a mile underground. If we encountered infected down there, we'd have nowhere to run. "We wait," I decided, "at least until we know more about what's happening outside. The military might secure the area, or the infection could burn itself out." Neither happened. What came instead was worse. On the second day, we lost the camera feeds to most of the prison. The last images from the yard showed at least 100 infected gathering near the administrative building. Some were inmates in jumpsuits. Others wore guard uniforms or medical scrubs. All moved with that same terrible, jerky purpose. We took turns sleeping, always keeping one person on watch. I started organizing our supplies into packs, one for each of us, just in case. Chelsea noticed, but said nothing. Lucas saw opportunity. "You're preparing to leave," he said when Chelsea was asleep. "You don't think we're going to be rescued either." "I'm preparing for all possibilities," I told him. "That's my job. Plan for the worst, hope for the best." "I can't wait any longer," he said. "My family needs me. My daughter is only 6. My son is 8. My wife can't protect them alone." I understood his fear. Those children were his world. But the world between here and Norfolk had become a gauntlet none of us were equipped to run. "Give it one more day," I urged. "We'll know more tomorrow." He agreed, reluctantly. But I saw him checking the maps of the drainage system, calculating his own escape route. I didn't stop him. Every man has the right to choose his own end. The third day brought two developments. First, the backup generators began failing intermittently. Fuel was running lower than expected, suggesting damage to the system. Second, we heard heavy impacts against our facility door. The infected had found us. Through one of the high windows, I could see them in the yard. Dozens, moving in that unnervingly erratic way, drawn perhaps by our movements or the sound of the generators. They weren't coordinating, just individually hammering at the door, climbing on each other trying to reach the windows. "The door will hold," I assured Chelsea, whose face had gone pale. "It's reinforced steel. They can't get through without tools." Even as I said it, I watched an infected guard fumble with his key card at the electronic lock. The power fluctuations had disabled it, thank God. But it showed they retained some memory, some basic skills. The impacts continued through the night, sometimes stopping for hours, then resuming with renewed intensity. We couldn't sleep. The noise alone kept us on edge, but worse was knowing what waited on the other side. Lucas made his decision during a rare, quiet period. "I'm leaving tomorrow at first light," he told us. "I've studied the drainage system. If I follow it to the river, I can make it to the highway, then cross country to Norfolk. 3 days, maybe 4. Chelsea tried to talk him out of it. I didn't. I knew that look in his eyes. The need to do something, anything, rather than wait for death to find you. Instead, I helped him prepare, giving him water purification tablets, a flashlight, tools that could serve as weapons, and a hand-drawn map of the drainage system. "The main tunnel branches half a mile in," I told him. "Take the right fork. It has service platforms every few hundred feet if you need to rest. The left fork narrows and floods during rain." He nodded, memorizing the details. "What about you two?" "We'll wait a bit longer," I said. "Chelsea's right that this is the safest place for now. When the generators fail completely, we'll reevaluate." That night, as Lucas slept and I took watch, Chelsea sat beside me near the door. "He's not going to make it, is he?" she whispered. I couldn't lie to her. "Probably not. But he needs to try. And us? We have skills," I said. "Water treatment, purification, distribution. If any form of society rebuilds, they'll need people who know how to handle water systems." She nodded, understanding. "In the apocalypse, your value as a human being becomes terribly practical. Knowledge that seemed mundane before suddenly becomes the difference between life and death. Chelsea and I knew how to make water safe. That made us worth keeping alive." The next morning, we helped Lucas into the drainage access point in our facility floor. The metal grate was heavy, designed to prevent any prisoner from using it as an escape route. It took all 3 of us to lift it. 4 days, Lucas said, hugging us both. "If you decide to follow, I'll leave markers at the junctions. Look for 3 vertical lines scratched into the concrete." Then he was gone, disappearing into the darkness below, the beam of his flashlight growing smaller until it vanished around a bend. I replaced the grate, knowing I might be sealing my friend's fate. But the alternative, leaving it open for infected to follow, was unthinkable. Chelsea and I returned to our watch. The facility felt emptier without Lucas, his absence a physical presence between us. Outside, the infected continued their relentless assault on our sanctuary as the backup generators sputtered toward inevitable failure. We lost Lucas 8 hours after he left. The security system had one functioning camera near the drainage exit point where the tunnels met the river. Chelsea and I watched as he emerged, checking his surroundings carefully before climbing out. He made it about 50 yards toward the tree line when 3 infected spotted him from the prison perimeter fence. They moved faster than Lucas. Much faster. I shut off the feed after the first one reached him. Chelsea didn't need to see the rest, and neither did I. We sat in silence for a long time, processing what we'd witnessed. "He never had a chance," Chelsea finally said, her voice hollow. "He knew the risk." It wasn't much comfort, but it was the truth. Lucas had chosen his path. I'd have done the same if I had children waiting for me. The generators failed completely that night. One moment the emergency lights were on, the dim red glow we'd become accustomed to, and then darkness. Absolute, disorienting darkness. I fumbled for my flashlight, the beam cutting through black air so thick it felt solid. "What happens now?" Chelsea asked. "Without power, we can't treat the water. We can't monitor the systems. We're just hiding." She was right. Our value had been tied to our ability to maintain the prison's water supply. Now, we were just 2 more potential meals for the infected. But I wasn't ready to give up. "We still have knowledge," I told her. "We know how to purify water without electricity. We know how to test for contaminants using basic chemistry. Those skills are rare and valuable." To who? Everyone's dead or dying. Not everyone. Humans are resilient, communities will form, and every community needs clean water. We rationed our flashlight use, preserving batteries. The darkness became our constant companion, broken only by faint daylight through the high windows and brief illumination when absolutely necessary. We spoke in whispers, though the infected outside had no such restraint. Their moans and the thudding impacts against our door formed a terrible soundtrack to our days. On the 4th day after the power failure, the attacks on the door intensified. I climbed on Chelsea's shoulders to peek through a window, careful to stay hidden. What I saw chilled my blood. At least 20 infected were coordinating, taking turns ramming a metal cart into the door. The lock was holding, but the frame was beginning to warp. "We need to leave," I told Chelsea as I climbed down. "The door won't last another day." She nodded, no argument this time. We packed quickly: water purification tablets, tools, the remaining food, first aid supplies, everything into the backpacks I'd prepared when Lucas left. I added my water testing kit, a specialized set of chemical reagents and testing strips I'd assembled over years. It would prove invaluable later. "The drainage tunnels?" Chelsea asked, eyeing the floor grate. "It's our only option. We'll follow Lucas's route, but we'll head east instead of south when we reach the river, away from population centers." We waited until the infected outside seemed less active, the impacts against the door more sporadic. Nighttime, based on the darkness through the windows. Then we lifted the heavy grate together, revealing the black maw of the tunnel below. "I'll go first," I said, lowering myself down. "Stay close. Touch my backpack if you can't see me." The tunnel was narrower than I remembered, barely 5 feet high, forcing us to crouch as we moved. Our flashlight beams bounced off wet concrete walls, creating moving shadows that made me flinch. The air was damp and heavy with the smell of stagnant water and something worse: decay. I tried not to think about what might be decomposing in the darkness beyond our light. We moved slowly, carefully. The main tunnel ran straight for about half a mile before the junction Lucas had taken. Our footsteps echoed despite our efforts to stay quiet. Each splash in the shallow water that covered the tunnel floor sounded impossibly loud. "Stop!" Chelsea whispered suddenly, grabbing my arm. "Listen!" I killed my flashlight. In the perfect darkness, I heard it. Movement ahead. Splashing. Something large, dragging through water. "Back!" I breathed. "Quietly!" We retreated step by careful step until we reached a maintenance alcove I'd remembered from past inspections. Barely big enough for 2 people, but hidden from the main tunnel. We squeezed in, pressed against each other, and waited. The splashing grew louder. Then came the moaning, That distinctive sound the infected made, part hunger, part rage. A beam of light swept the tunnel. One of them had a flashlight. Lucas's flashlight, I realized with sick certainty. I felt Chelsea trembling against me. My own heart was pounding so hard I was sure the infected would hear it. The light passed our hiding spot once, then again, more slowly the second time. The infected was searching. We stayed frozen for what felt like hours as the infected moved back and forth in the tunnel. Eventually, the light and sounds retreated, continuing in the direction we'd come from, toward our abandoned facility. "It's looking for us," Chelsea whispered when we dared breathe again. "It knows we were there." I nodded in the darkness. "We can't go back, and we can't take Lucas's route. If that one came up from the river exit, others might have found it too." "Is there another way?" "Yes, but it's longer and more difficult." I hadn't mentioned this route before because it wasn't practical for Lucas's plan. It involved maintenance tunnels that branched off from the main drainage system, eventually connecting to storm drains outside prison property. The tunnels were narrower, some barely big enough to crawl through, and they flooded completely during heavy rain. We continued forward cautiously, reaching the junction where Lucas had gone right. I found his markers, 3 vertical lines scratched into the concrete, too regular to be accidental. Following them would lead to the river exit where we'd watched him die. Instead, we took an unmarked side tunnel that branched left and upward. This passage was even more confined, forcing us to crawl in sections. Chelsea went first now, her smaller frame better suited to the tight space. We moved in silence, conserving breath and listening constantly for any sound of pursuit. The air grew fouler as we progressed, thick with methane from decomposing waste. Our flashlight beams weakened, the batteries failing after days of use. Soon, we were navigating by touch as much as sight, feeling our way along slimy walls. The tunnel finally widened into a junction chamber with a maintenance ladder leading up to a storm drain cover. I climbed first, pushing against the heavy metal lid. It didn't budge. "It's blocked," I told Chelsea, "something heavy on top." "We can't go back," she said, voice tight with fear. I heard splashing behind us. I pressed my shoulder against the cover and pushed with everything I had. Pain shot through my arm, but the lid shifted slightly. Again. Another inch. One more desperate effort and the cover scraped aside enough to create a gap. I peered out. Dawn light, trees, no infected in immediate sight. But the cover was partially blocked by a crashed vehicle, the wheel well pressed against the metal lid. "We can fit through," I told Chelsea, "but it'll be tight. I'll go first and help pull you up." I squeezed through the gap, scraping my shoulders raw. Outside, I could see we were in a drainage ditch beside a rural access road. The crashed vehicle was a police cruiser, its front end smashed into a tree. Empty, thankfully. Chelsea was halfway through the opening when we heard them. Multiple infected, their distinctive moans carrying through the morning air. They emerged from the trees across the road, 5 of them moving in that terrible jerky run toward us. "Hurry," I urged, pulling Chelsea's arms. She scrambled up, catching her backpack on the opening's edge. The infected were closing fast. 30 yards. 20. "Leave it," I shouted as she struggled with the pack. She slipped free, abandoning the backpack as I pulled her clear of the drain. We ran, not looking back, into the woods on our side of the road. The infected followed, crashing through underbrush behind us. We had a small lead, but they were faster. My lungs burned. Chelsea was falling behind. Then she stumbled on a root, crying out as she fell. I turned back, pulling her up, but they were too close now. We'd never outrun them. "There," Chelsea gasped, pointing to a massive fallen oak. Its upturned root system created a wall of dirt and tangled roots. A defensive position. We scrambled up the root ball, placing the barrier between us and the infected. I grabbed a broken branch, our only weapon. The infected reached the tree and began climbing, clawing at the roots, their rash-covered faces contorted with hunger. I swung the branch, connecting with the first one's head. It fell back, but immediately started climbing again. There were too many. We couldn't fight them all. Chelsea screamed. One had circled around, grabbing her ankle from behind. She kicked frantically as I swung the branch at its face. We were seconds from being overwhelmed. Then came the shots. 3 quick cracks. 2 infected dropped. The others turned toward the new threat. More shots. The infected holding Chelsea's leg collapsed. The rest fled, displaying a survival instinct I hadn't seen before. "Don't move," a voice called from the trees. "Stay right where you are until we check you." I held Chelsea, both of us trembling with exhaustion and adrenaline. Through the trees came our rescuers, 2 men in hunting gear carrying rifles. They approached cautiously, keeping their distance. "Any bites?" the older one asked. "Scratches." "Show us your arms." We pulled up our sleeves, revealing unbroken skin. No copper-colored rash. They relaxed slightly, though the rifles didn't lower. "I'm Randall," the older man said. "This is my son, Evan. You're on our hunting property. Where'd you come from?" "Oak Ridge," I managed to say. "The prison. I'm Thaddeus. This is Chelsea. We worked in water treatment there." Randall's eyebrows rose. "Water treatment? Like purification?" I nodded, understanding immediately what made us valuable to them. Some things never change, even when the world does. "Yes, we know how to make water safe." Randall and Evan exchanged looks. "Then I think," Randall said, finally lowering his rifle, "we might have something to talk about." Randall and Evan took us to their property. 20 acres of woods with a sturdy farmhouse and outbuildings. 5 families had gathered there, about 20 people total. They'd barricaded the perimeter with vehicles and makeshift fencing. Sentries kept watch from the roof. Children played in a fenced backyard, a heartbreaking glimpse of normalcy amid chaos. Their immediate problem was water. The property had a well, but their pump required electricity, which they only had from a small generator they ran sparingly. They were melting stream water over fires, but people were getting sick. Without proper filtration or treatment, waterborne illness would eventually kill them as surely as the infected. "I can help," I told Randall as we sat at his kitchen table that first evening. "You have the resources here to build a sustainable water system. I just need some materials." Chelsea and I spent the next day inventorying their supplies. They had collected rainwater barrels, basic tools, and some outdoor equipment. Not ideal, but workable. I designed a simple gravity-fed filtration system using sand, charcoal from their fires, and cloth layers. For disinfection, I found bleach in the laundry room. Diluted properly, it would kill most pathogens. "This is temporary," I explained as we built the system. "Long-term, we'll need better solutions, but it will make the water safer than boiling alone." The families watched with a mixture of skepticism and hope as we assembled our contraption. When the first clean water dripped through, a woman named Marion wept openly. Her youngest child had been fighting diarrhea for days, a death sentence in this new world without hospitals or medicine. "How do you know this stuff?" Evan asked as we refined the system. 12 years managing water systems at the prison," I told him. "Before that, 2 years of environmental engineering at Virginia Tech before I had to drop out. Water is just physics and chemistry. Understand both, and you can work with almost anything." Chelsea proved invaluable, her recent education complementing my practical experience. She remembered formulas and reactions I'd forgotten years ago. Together, We improved the system daily, adding refinements as we found materials. By our fourth day there, we had constructed a reliable water purification station capable of producing enough clean water for all 20 people. I trained 2 teenagers to maintain it, showing them how to backflush filters and test for basic contaminants using a makeshift kit I created from household chemicals. In return for our help, the group shared their food and shelter. They had stockpiled some supplies before things collapsed, and the hunters regularly brought back game from the woods. It wasn't comfortable, but it was survival. Chelsea integrated quickly, her youth making it easier to connect with the others. I remained somewhat apart, watching, observing, planning. At night, I sketched water systems in a notebook Randall had given me, designing improvements we could implement with scavenged materials. A week into our stay, Evan and 2 other men returned from a supply run to a nearby town. They brought back medicine, some canned food, and more concerning news. "The infected are changing," Evan reported during dinner. "They're moving in groups now, coordinated, and they're setting traps." "Traps?" Randall looked skeptical. "They're mindless." "Not anymore. We saw them herd a deer into a dead end. They're using basic tactics." Evan turned to me. "The town's water tower collapsed. Infected were all over it when it went down, almost like they targeted it." A chill ran through me. If the infected were evolving, developing even rudimentary strategy, nowhere would remain safe for long. Our barricades wouldn't hold against a coordinated attack. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat on the porch, watching the tree line. Chelsea joined me, wrapped in a blanket against the cool night air. "You're thinking of leaving," she said simply. I nodded. "This place is temporary. The infected are adapting. Resources will run out. We need to find somewhere more sustainable. These people need us. I've taught them the basics. They'll manage." I paused, choosing my words carefully. "I'm heading east, toward the coast. You should stay here. It's safer with the group." Chelsea was quiet for a long moment. "My parents lived in Virginia Beach. If they survived, that's where they'd be." I understood immediately. "You want to look for them." "Yes. The coast will be overrun. Population density was highest there." "I know, but I have to try." I respected her decision. We'd all make choices like this, weighing survival against the human connections that made survival worthwhile. Some would choose safety. Others would risk everything for the chance to find loved ones. 2 days later, we announced our decision to leave. Randall tried to convince us to stay, offering better accommodations, larger food portions. The others joined in, especially Marion, whose child had recovered thanks to clean water. "We've shown you the water system," I told them. "You can maintain it now. Chelsea and I need to move on. There are others who need this knowledge." Reluctantly, they helped us prepare. Evan gave me his backup hunting knife. Randall contributed a hand-cranked radio. Marion insisted we take extra food. Another family offered a worn but functional tent. By dawn the next day, we were ready. "Head northeast," Randall advised as we stood at the property edge. "The highway is overrun, but there's a rail line that might be clearer. And take this." He handed me a folded paper, a map of the county with markings showing areas they'd found to be dangerous or safe. We left at first light, moving quietly through the woods. Chelsea carried the tent and food. I had the tools, water purification supplies, and my test kit. Between us, enough to survive if we were careful. The journey was slow. We avoided roads, keeping to woods and fields where we could move with better cover. When we did cross roads, we saw evidence of the collapse. Abandoned vehicles, scattered possessions, occasional bodies. We didn't examine these too closely. Some horrors are better left unobserved. Water dictated our route. I'd taught Chelsea that in survival, water sources were more important than direct paths. We followed streams when possible, testing each new source before drinking. Most were contaminated, not always with pathogens but with chemicals from abandoned industrial sites or the natural decay of bodies. My test kit proved invaluable, likely saving our lives several times. We encountered infected daily, always in small groups, 2 or 3 together, moving with that distinctive jerky purposefulness. We learned to avoid them by moving downwind, staying still when they passed nearby, traveling during their less active periods in bright midday sun. On our 3rd day, we reached a small rural community, not much more than a crossroads with a gas station, post office, and a few scattered houses. I wanted to bypass it entirely, but Chelsea noticed a column of smoke rising from behind the gas station. Controlled fire meant people. We approached cautiously, circling through woods until we could observe from cover. Behind the station, an elderly man tended a small fire under a metal barrel. A crude distillation system for purifying water, but dangerously inefficient. I could see immediately that his method would leave most contaminants intact. "We should help him," Chelsea whispered. "It could be a trap. He's at least 70. What's he going to do?" She was right. We approached openly, hands visible. The old man started at our appearance but didn't run or reach for a weapon. He introduced himself as Frank, a retired science teacher who'd been alone since his wife succumbed to rust fever. "I know this isn't working right," he said, gesturing to his contraption, "but it's better than drinking it straight from the creek." I examined his system. "You're on the right track, but the distillation needs improvement, and you're using too much fuel for too little water." For the next few hours, Chelsea and I helped Frank reconstruct his purification system. We used materials from the abandoned gas station, plastic containers, metal shelving, even the rubber hoses from the air pump. By evening, he had a functioning gravity filter similar to the one we'd built at Randall's, but sized for one person. Frank insisted we stay the night. He had converted the station's storeroom into a secure shelter, reinforcing the door and blocking the windows. Inside was cramped but safer than sleeping exposed. He shared his food, mostly canned goods scavenged from nearby homes. As we ate, Frank told us about other survivors. "There's a group at the community college about 10 miles east. They've got the science building locked down. Another at the regional hospital, though that's more dangerous. Infected all around it." "Any word from the coast?" Chelsea asked. "Virginia Beach?" Frank's expression told us everything before he spoke. Military bombed parts of Norfolk and Virginia Beach when the infection first spread, tried to contain it. Didn't work, just drove survivors inland. Chelsea said nothing, but I saw the pain in her eyes. Her parents' chances, already slim, had just diminished further. I put my hand on her shoulder, a gesture of comfort that felt woefully inadequate. That night, as Frank slept, Chelsea whispered to me in the darkness, "I still need to go, even if it's just to know for sure." "I know," I told her. "We'll go together." By morning, I'd made my decision. Frank needed our help more than he realized. Alone, elderly, his purification system would eventually fail without maintenance. When we announced we were continuing east, he tried to hide his disappointment. "Before we go," I said, "I need to show you some important maintenance steps." I spent the next 2 hours teaching him everything I could about water safety, how to backflush filters, replace materials, test for basic contaminants. I gave him half my testing chemicals and fashioned a simple test kit from station supplies. "You've given an old man a fighting chance," Frank said as we prepared to leave. "Take this." He handed me a small handheld CB radio. "It doesn't reach far, maybe 5 miles on good days. but the college group broadcasts updates every evening. Might help you avoid danger areas. We left Frank with mixed emotions. Guilt at abandoning someone vulnerable, relief at continuing our journey, worry about what lay ahead. The radio proved immediately valuable, picking up scattered transmissions from other survivor groups. Most were short, coded messages about resource locations or infected movements, but they painted a picture of what waited for us. A patchwork of isolated communities trying to survive in a collapsed world. As we walked, I turned Frank's information over in my mind. A community college with a science building. That meant laboratories, equipment, possibly chemical stores. If we could reach it, I might be able to create better water testing tools, even proper purification chemicals. It was worth investigating, even if it meant a detour from our coastal heading. "Chelsea," I said as we paused to rest, "I think we should try for the college first. We could resupply, maybe find better equipment." She considered this, then nodded. "Makes sense, and someone there might have information about the coast. Better than walking in blind." We adjusted our course, heading southeast toward the community college. The terrain became more challenging, thicker woods, steeper hills, but Chelsea moved with growing confidence, her city-bred hesitation replaced by developing wilderness skills. I found myself proud of her adaptability, her refusal to surrender to despair despite everything she'd lost. That evening, we made camp in an abandoned hunting blind raised on stilts above a small clearing. Safe from ground-level infected, with good visibility. As darkness fell, I tuned the CB radio to scan for transmissions, catching fragments of conversations between survivor groups. Some sounded organized, others desperate. All confirmed what we already knew. The world had irreversibly changed, and adaptation was our only option. We reached the community college on our second day after leaving Frank. From the woods, we observed the campus cautiously. A chain-link fence surrounded the main buildings, reinforced with vehicles and metal sheets. Armed people patrolled the perimeter. Solar panels glinted on the science building's roof. These people had organization, resources. "Wait here," I told Chelsea, handing her my pack. "I'll approach alone first. If anything happens, head back to Frank's." "That's ridiculous," she replied. "We go together or not at all." She was right. Division would only weaken us. We approached openly, hands raised. The guards spotted us immediately, rifles lifting in warning. I called out clearly, explaining who we were and what we could offer. Water treatment expertise, the magic words that had kept us alive so far. After a tense discussion, they let us in. The science building had become a fortress and community center, housing about 50 survivors. They'd protected lab equipment, converted classrooms to living quarters, and established basic services. But they had a critical problem. Their water filtration system was failing. Contamination had sickened several people. Our arrival seemed almost prophetic to them. Professor Abernathy, a chemistry teacher who'd become their leader, gave us a tour of their setup. They'd rigged an impressive rainwater collection system on the roof, but their filtration relied on diminishing chemical supplies. Without proper treatment, they faced waterborne illness within weeks. "We can help," I told him, examining their system, "but we'll need access to the chemistry lab." For the next 3 days, Chelsea and I worked with their engineering team to redesign their water system. We created a sustainable filtration process using materials available on campus: sand from landscaping, charcoal from their cooking fires, fractured stone from the parking lot. For disinfection, we synthesized a basic chlorine solution using salt and electricity. Crude, but effective. The community welcomed our knowledge with generous hospitality. We received proper meals, clean clothing, and private quarters, luxuries we'd almost forgotten. Chelsea thrived. collaborating with the science team, sharing her environmental engineering knowledge. I found my own role as a practical problem solver, bridging the gap between academic theory and survival reality. On our fourth evening, during the community dinner, I sat with Abernathy. He was more forthcoming after a successful water test showed our system was working. "We get reports from ham radio operators," he explained when I asked about the larger situation. "Most cities are dead zones, too many infected. But the military holds certain strategic locations. Norfolk Naval Station is one of them." My heart quickened. "They've secured the naval base?" "Partially. They control the shipyard and some surrounding areas. Very selective about who they let in. Need useful skills." He looked at me meaningfully, like water treatment expertise. Later that night, I found Chelsea on the roof, staring eastward where the distant coast lay beyond the horizon. I told her what Abernathy had shared. "It's close enough to look for my parents," she said quietly. "And if they're not there, maybe the military knows something." "The naval station was where my father worked," I admitted. "I know those water systems, helped maintain them during summer breaks from college. Then we both have reasons to go." The decision was made. We spent another day completing the college's water system, training several people to maintain it. In return, they provided us with better equipment, a proper water testing kit from the chemistry lab, a more powerful radio, even a small solar charger. Professor Abernathy gave us detailed maps showing cleared routes and danger zones between the college and Norfolk. We left at dawn, heading east with renewed purpose. The journey would take at least a week, maybe 2, depending on conditions. The roads were more exposed than I liked, but faster than picking through woods. We moved cautiously, using buildings and vehicles for cover, freezing at any sign of infected. On our third day, the CB radio crackled to life. A clear, structured broadcast, unlike the scattered transmissions we'd heard before. "This is Norfolk Naval Station Emergency Broadcast. We are accepting civilians with critical infrastructure skills. Water treatment specialists urgently needed." Repeat, water treatment specialists urgently needed for contamination crisis. Approach main gate with hands visible. Daily admission at noon only. Chelsea and I exchanged looks of disbelief. It seemed too perfect, too precisely what we needed to hear. But the transmission continued with technical details only water treatment professionals would understand. Specific chemical parameters, filtration challenges, terminology civilians wouldn't use as bait in a trap. "It's legitimate," I told Chelsea. "Those are real water quality issues they're describing." That night, we found shelter in an abandoned ranger station similar to the one Frank had mentioned. The building was secure, with good visibility and a communications setup. I managed to get the station's radio working, more powerful than our CB unit. Scanning frequencies, I found scattered emergency broadcasts, most automated and repeating. But one channel carried live communications between military units. I listened for hours, piecing together the situation. The naval station was indeed operational, but facing a serious water contamination crisis. Something had damaged their main treatment facility. Without clean water, they couldn't maintain operations or support their civilian population. They were desperate enough to risk broadcasting for specialists. It was exactly the opportunity we needed. But the journey ahead remained treacherous. The closer we got to Norfolk, the more concentrated the infected would be. Urban areas were death traps. "We'll follow the railway line," I decided, studying our maps. "It runs through less populated areas, has service tunnels and maintenance buildings for shelter. Slower, but safer." The next morning, we set out along the tracks. The elevated railway gave us better visibility of our surroundings. We moved carefully, watching for movement, listening for the distinctive sounds of infected. Progress was slow but steady, On the fifth day, we spotted the first signs of military presence, a helicopter patrolling far ahead following the railway line. Hours later, we reached a checkpoint, concrete barriers across the tracks, armed personnel scanning the approach. Military, not infected. Real, organized humans. We approached cautiously, hands raised, calling out our specialties before we got too close. They were suspicious but professional, checking us for bites or signs of infection. When they confirmed we were clean, they radioed their command. "Water treatment specialists," the soldier reported. 2 civilians, one with prison system experience, one with environmental engineering background. The response was immediate. "Bring them in. Priority transport. Commander Okafor wants them at the shipyard filtration plant by evening." Within an hour, we were in a military vehicle headed for Norfolk Naval Station. The soldier driving explained their situation as we traveled. "Contamination hit our primary treatment facility 2 weeks ago. Chemical spill from a collapsed industrial site upriver. Our specialists couldn't handle it. Commander Okafor has been broadcasting for experts ever since." "What about the infected?" Chelsea asked. "We've secured a perimeter around the station and shipyard. Regular patrols keep them back. Inside is safe, mostly." The naval station appeared on the horizon. Ships docked in the distance, the massive cranes of the shipyard silhouetted against the afternoon sky. My father had worked under those cranes for 20 years. I felt a strange sense of homecoming despite everything that had happened. The driver took us directly to the shipyard's water treatment facility, a complex of buildings I recognized from my teenage summers helping my father. Commander Okafor met us personally, a stern woman with tired eyes and the bearing of someone carrying impossible responsibilities. "You understand water systems?" she asked without preamble. "Yes, ma'am," I replied. 12 years at Oak Ridge Correctional. Before that, I helped maintain these very systems during summers with my father. He worked here." Her expression softened slightly. "We need you to assess our situation immediately. The contamination is spreading through secondary systems now. Without clean water, this entire operation collapses within days." For the next several hours, Chelsea and I inspected their facility. The problem was complex but not unsolvable. Chemical contamination had compromised their filters and treatment processes. With our combined knowledge and the resources available at the naval station, we could design a solution. That night, as we worked on our assessment, Chelsea received unexpected news. A civilian coordinator had cross-referenced her parents' names with their registry of survivors. Her mother was there, working in the medical unit. Her father hadn't made it. I held her as she processed this. Grief and relief intertwined in equal measure. The chance to reunite with her mother gave our work even greater urgency. We stayed up through the night, finalizing our water treatment plan. The next morning, we presented our solution to Commander Okafor and her engineering team. It would require significant labor and resource allocation, but it would restore clean water to the station. The alternative, evacuation, wasn't viable with thousands of civilian refugees under their protection. "How long?" Okafor asked. 3 weeks for full implementation," I told her. "But we can get partial systems working within days." She studied our plans, then nodded decisively. "You'll have whatever resources you need. Both of you are now critical personnel with appropriate quarters and rations." She looked at us with genuine gratitude. "You've given us a chance." That afternoon, Chelsea reunited with her mother. I watched from a distance as they embraced, giving them privacy in their emotional moment. Later, Chelsea introduced us. Her mother had been a hospital administrator, another practical skill that had made her valuable to the survivors. That evening, as we stood on the shipyard dock watching the sunset over the water, I felt something I hadn't experienced since before the outbreak. Hope, not just for survival, but for rebuilding. This place, with its resources and organization, could become a foundation for recovery. "I think we found where we're supposed to be," Chelsea said, echoing my thoughts. I nodded. Water will rebuild civilization, just like it built it in the first place. Settlements form around clean water sources. Always have. So, we're just continuing an ancient tradition. Exactly. I looked out at the ships in the harbor, the secured perimeter, the people working with purpose. My father used to say the shipyard was where America's strength came from. Maybe he was right in ways he never imagined. 1 month had passed since rust fever first appeared at Oak Ridge. I had lost friends, seen civilization collapse, and witnessed humanity at its worst and best. Through it all, my supposedly mundane knowledge, how to make water safe, had proven to be the most valuable skill in this new world. As I record this now from the relative safety of Norfolk Naval Station, I want other survivors to understand. Your value isn't in your strength or your weapons. It's in what you know, what you can create, what you can teach others. Water treatment saved my life and gave me purpose. Whatever your knowledge, medicine, agriculture, mechanics, electronics, it can do the same for you. The infected are still out there. Resources are limited. Dangers abound. But here, we're building something sustainable. Something that might eventually reclaim what was lost. And it all starts with the most basic human need: clean water. I'm Thaddeus Kincaid. I survived the first month of the zombie apocalypse because I knew how to make water safe. And that knowledge, as ordinary as it seemed in the old world, turned out to be worth more than gold.